JasonCharles.net.
Deep talk, deep sounds.
This is the Carl Arrington Archive on JasonCharles.net.
This is Carl Arrington. This is an excerpt of my interview with writer Stephen King that took place in Bangor, Maine, in an airplane hangar which he was using as an office, and it was on the occasion of the release of the Stand series on TV in May of 1994.
The Stand, as a miniseries, is basically an entertainment. It's basically a fantasy story with the United States of America substituting for Mordor or the land of the hobbits or whatever. I wanted to try and tell a fantasy story against the backdrop of the United States. And the plague that I wrote about was a means to unleash magic on a prosaic world, a world that we live in every day, in the bolodromes and the exurban sprawls and the mauling of America and the rest of that. And for me, that was very liberating, and it was big fun. It was intensive fun. And I think that, too, the whole idea of depopulating America and having these survivors get together and start to rebuild is an immensely attractive idea to a lot of people whose first thought is, as mine was, oh good, no more mortgage payments. Those bastards are finally off my neck. Everybody sees themselves in terms of the story as a survivor rather than one of the 99% of everybody who gets knocked off, because it's really no fun without that. So, whereas you have something like The Day After as a realistic end-of-the-world story, where the only sponsorship that ABC could find were people like Ronco Records, and Slim Whitman and stuff like that, and that's the truth. That's the truth. The Stand, which has the subject of the apocalypse anyway, has this huge push from ABC, and they see it as a tremendously profitable vehicle. But The Stand is upbeat, whereas The Day After was a sort of downbeat thing. And The Stand is basically a story about living, whereas The Day After is a story about dying. And there's a big difference between those things. There's a big difference just when you go to the sponsors and say, hey, no radiation sickness, just a lot of bad clothes.
Well, I mean, corroding corpses and seeping bodily fluids are a major part of this. How have you handled those delicacies? I've seen it, but I'd like you to comment on handling that for TV.
Well, we talked a lot about how gushy we wanted this whole business to be. And we opted for a sort of middle course where what people hear and see in the first two nights of the play are people who have bad colds, and there are people who are constantly sneezing and blowing their noses. But these are things that anybody is exposed to on the subway, for God's sakes, on a daily basis. There are no scenes of mass carnage. There are some places that are a little bit nasty and a little bit disturbing, but that's what my work's about, nasty and disturbing. And so I've tried to carry enough of that through, and really the network got behind us and backed us up in terms of saying, yeah, we support your freedom to tell the story, and what you feel like you have to show, we're going to try to get on the screen for you. We had some back and forth and some arguments, but Standards and Practices basically got behind us and said, yeah, we understand that you're telling a story that's supposed to unsettle people, shock people, and make them think. But I think what they also got behind, Carl, was the idea that we were telling a story that ultimately, came down on the side of man's nobility and the ability of man to rise above himself and sacrifice for his fellow man. And the real old-fashioned idea that good triumphs over evil.
Right.
And because of those things, we were able to add a lot of things into the mix. And I think of ABC as really almost heroic in terms of approving this story and standing behind us during this mounting groundswell in Congress about there's too much violence on TV.
Yeah, I want to get into that. I mean, what do you have to say about that? I mean, what you make your living? That's your bread and butter.
Well, it's ridiculous. Of course, it's ridiculous on the face of it. To have intelligent men like Paul Simon and Ernest Hollings, both of whom I respect in terms of their political stances, for these guys to get up in the Senate and accuse network television of causing the culture of violence that we have is the most absurd thing that I've ever heard. We've got people doing drive-by shootings in Compton in L.A. and postal clerks, offing their co-workers and guys walking through commuter trains and shooting, random commuters that they don't even know. John Wayne Gacy kills 24, 25 kids and buries them under the house. And what are you telling me? Because they watched Maude? Because they watched Wings? Because they watched what? Murder, She Wrote? You kidding me? I mean, seriously, who are these people talking about? They're trying to talk about Beavis and Butthead, and Ernest Hollings says that cartoon show, Beaver and Buffcoat. This guy is supposed to be leading some sort of informed investigation on TV in America, and he doesn't even know who they're talking about. Come on. The problem in this country is guns and dope and booze. Guns, dope, and booze. In that order. Guns, dope, and booze. These guys know it, but basically they can't do anything about it. I mean, you're not going to get Ernest Hollings up there to say, basically, if we took alcohol and drugs and guns out of the hands of the people doing these things, 94% of the violence in this country would drop out of the mix because they can't. The problems are out of control, but they've got to get reelected, so I guess that's where it's coming from. 94% of the people who are in jail in this country for felony crimes are high when they do the crime. That doesn't have anything to do with TV, really. TV is so toothless. I mean, there's nothing really happening there besides basketball and sitcoms, so far as I can see. These people are ridiculous. The most violent TV last year was Janet Reno burning down the Branch Davidian compound in Waco. And it was on TV. They showed it again and again and again. NBC's got a program called America's, most exciting home videos or something like that. There will be executions on TV soon. I love that movie. Did you see that?
No, I didn't. I did not see that movie.
Sean Young figures out a way to put an execution on pay-per-view. It was great. I'm sorry, I get carried away with the subject.
Do you have any, since it's really an apocalyptic tale, do you have any personal thoughts about what's going to happen in the year 2000 or 2013, as some people think?
Well, I think we'll be a little more crowded. We'll be a little sicker because our total species-wide ability to respond to antibiotics will be down, or the capacity of the bugs to withstand antibiotics will be up. Large numbers of us will be a little hungrier. I think that by the year 2013, at least one of the major cities of the world will be scrubbed by an atomic nuclear weapon, because sooner or later, we're unlike guys that have been juggling Indian clubs for 50 years. Somebody will drop one. I also think that there actually will be an information highway by the year 2013. That there's going to be a lot more access to information around the world, and that probably by 2013, virtual reality entertainment will have become a fact. And there'll still be movies, but what people will really want to go to are theaters.
Right.
So there'll be a lot of changes, but basically I think the fundamental things apply as time goes by. It's not going to change.
You've been listening to an excerpt of my interview with Stephen King in Bangor, Maine in May of 1994. This is Carl Arrington. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Carl Arrington Archive on jasoncharles.net. The Carl Arrington Archive is a collection of hundreds of hours of rare, in-depth interviews with the greatest musicians, performing artists, and writers, conducted over 4 decades by veteran journalist Carl Arrington. For more information about the series and upcoming episodes, go to the Carl Arrington Archive on the JasonCharles.net Podcast Network Audio Dramas channel. Follow us on Instagram at Carl Arrington Archive and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information regarding licensing and full extended interviews, contact Carl Arrington Archive at gmail.com.
JasonCharles.net. Deep talk, deep sounds.
That was so deep.
Very, very deep.